Hey everyone, I went to Japan in February of 2017, and this is the slideshow. You can see me here relaxing in the airport. It was a long trip. Japan Airlines featured here, treated me to some really good food. Everything was just taken care of properly through that airline. It was like 25 hours one way, well, roughly. And here we are in Japan. I was struck by all of the solar panels, especially. And as soon as I arrived, I was greeted by a television crew, and there's a show over there called Why Did You Come to Japan? So they interviewed me, but I don't know if I've ever been on TV over there. Here's the yen that I bought for the trip, exchanged. This is the first famous, Japan's famous for its vending machines, of course. This is the first one that I bought something from, and I got a cafe au lait. Delicious. They have both hot and cold items. Here's the view out the window of where I was staying in Muroran, Japan, in Hokkaido, the northernmost island. Cold and snowy. This is the first meal I had with my friends. Their popular dish, very famous for curry. And the pictures are going to kind of jump around a bit. I tried to roughly arrange them into order, but this is some of the stuff that I found at the arcade. This city's roughly has all of the amenities you would expect from a mid-sized city, and it's similar to the one I live in America. Here's a shop filled with games, magazines, movies, media, just kind of a media shop, reminiscent of one of them that I worked at in the States. Everything nicely arranged there, and PPAP is very popular while I was there. We're going to see a little bit more about that later. Pen, pineapple, apple pen. Drivers over there have to display on their cars whether they're elderly or a beginning driver, and those are the insignias you'll see. Here's some of the beautiful coastline. There were a couple of beaches that I visited. One was called Itanki Beach. Here's a beautiful fox. And there was a shrine kind of in the middle of the city, and here's one of my nighttime visits to the shrine, walking through. Back to some thrifting, just some neat looking guitars. All kinds of really fun stuff in these thrift shops. Thrifting was one of the joys that I experienced over there. And that's kind of like my guitar, an ESP LTD style, only that's the base model. Nice! Okay, a Famicom. I, of course, grew up playing Nintendo and Super Nintendo, so it's exciting to see that all these toys and games are still available. Giant monsters, of course, and I had this very Voltron growing up, and I can still remember how all of those various lions come apart and go together. And different types of statues are popular. This one has sort of a cyberpunk feel that I really like, similar to Android Netrunner or Shadowrun. Here's some Louis Vuitton bags. Unique in Japan is the fact that thrift shops, I just love this guy's jacket. The guy next to me, when I was purchasing $50 worth of ceramics, was buying like an $800 Louis Vuitton small hand purse. So the value of things, like you would never go into a shop in America, a thrift store, and see something like that. Okay, these are like utility lines, which I thought was interesting because they were over the roads. And jumping to and fro, here's a neat little knife. And back to some appliances and things. It was really unique seeing the way that the city infrastructure was all set up. And nice juxtaposition here. Cute stuff and skulls. I actually had a Snapchat just specifically for the purposes of living and staying in Japan, so that was that. And I did have some Indian food and some pizza and various types of cuisine other than Japanese food that I would often go and buy. There was their Valentine's special. So I enjoyed my semi-weekly trips to the marketplace just to go shopping. But all that Indian food hit the spot. I really wish I would have went back there again. And some bowling with one of our friends. I liked that my shoes matched the ball. The high wire climax, and expensive, although beautiful. Oh, crime? Anyway, so at the arcades, people had drawn and posted up onto the bulletin board a lot of the things that they had drawn. You can see the unique art style and the wonderful artistic talent of the people who would frequent this arcade. So several shots of that. And here we have a UFO machine. They're very popular over there, and the grabbing claw could grab one of these little monsters, or little anteater guys. There's an alien. I almost bought it and brought it home in my luggage. Tempting, right? Here's some architecture I thought I would take a snapshot of. It's very appealing to me. Drank a lot of beer over there, including this special package of lager or draft beer. On TV, they would have a lot of gaming, which I thought was unique. So American audiences really would be shocked to just see chess matches on TV during prime time. But it's definitely a thing. If I'm not mistaken, that's shogi. Anyway, also sumo. I'm getting my wires crossed a bit, remembering the specifics of some of these game names. Restful House Betty. And walking around the city, it's sort of an industrial city, a lot of industry, and that'll become apparent a little bit later, but also surrounded by mountainous region, and also, as I mentioned, right on the coast. So wonderful situation. This is a nice and architectural shot that I thought was interesting inside someone's house. As I was walking around a lot, I was staying with fellow YouTubers who were teaching English over there with the JET program. And I went out with some of the other teachers one evening, and we had sushi. You'll see here some of the sushi coming around on the conveyor belt. I used to live near a conveyor belt sushi spot, so it was sort of like a fun thing. Here's some Magic the Gathering players or other collectible card game players inside of a shop dedicated to that. And just wonderful, hilly, snowy. There I am once again on playing my friend's bass guitar. The Snap Decision was my Snapchat. And YouTube, of course. I love YouTube quite a lot, but when you're in another country, sometimes you have to make do. The woman I was staying with prepared me this delicious meal a couple of mornings. We sat and ate it with the morning sun. Here I am at that bowling alley, having a nice time, trying to stay warm. Temperature was uniformly cold. In some cases, quite a lot of snow. Actually, trekking up this hill, this mountain, the snow was 3 or maybe 3 feet deep or more in places because it was just sort of on the side of the mountain. And a lot of people were doing nice gardening efforts. And as we reached the top, you can see the ocean there stretching out and the city. Wonderful experience and a very nice afternoon, early evening, getting to view that, watching the waves crash in and seeing that big view. And on the way back, we saw, at one point or another, we saw these sleds and had a lot of fun sledding for an hour or so in this little park as we were trudging through the snow. Great experience, good memory. Here's, it's popular over there to use these facial creams that lighten your skin. So there's some more PPAP stuff. I was sort of timid about bringing certain products home because I didn't want to, make someone dye their skin if they didn't want to, or bleach their skin rather. Some arcade stuff, very sophisticated, of course, Japanese arcades. Some of them, like the one we just saw, would take cards, like RFID cards that would affect things. And some of the music shops, I also saw like flower shops and musical instrument stores. Made for a really nice couple of afternoons exploring. Of course, Pokemon. There's a Pokemon store in Sapporo. And then this is probably from Sapporo, or maybe, I don't know, probably not an airport. But here I am in Sapporo with the gardening friend, enjoying our time. The snow festival is going on. It was one of the things I was especially excited about. And here's a equestrian. And some of these snow sculptures, as you can see, are quite large. That's a Final Fantasy themed one. And so at night they would light all these up. We were only there during the day though, and I'm pretty sure that this TV would receive some projections, for people to enjoy, and just a mammoth situation. I'm not sure exactly what that building is, but it was big enough to easily, house offices and things. And I remember talking to this little mascot for a while. Tremendous situation. I'm not sure how long the Snow Festival was going on, but you can see some staggering stuff and more PPAP. Also, world politics are on the stage. So this may or may not be Donald Trump, but fairly confident that this is Donald Trump. So everyone in the world was aware of the political race, making statements about it. It was a wonderful time. It was the only day we were in Sapporo. When I came around the corner, I was like, what is this? What is this? But if you tip your head sideways, it becomes more clear. And some Star Wars stuff. And maybe the sister city is Portland. I'm not too sure exactly, but you can just see the care and attention. And I'm only showing a small fraction of the snow sculptures we saw that day. We got to walk around and see the city and see important messages such as this one: love can cure anything. Would happily support that message. Godzilla there. And finally, just an odd abstract. The abstract ones were most interesting to me in a lot of cases. We went to a video game theme store called Controller, just beside the park. And the park is where the snow sculptures were. This is a neat can of beer that I drank that day. I actually got rather sick on the way back from our trip to Sapporo, so I spent a day and a half quite ill. But it didn't do anything to destroy those beautiful memories. Underground Sapporo, there's this long corridor of shops. More Pokemon. Just showing some neat architecture and design ideas. There's the Pokemon store. And this was kind of neat. Those are coffee beans embedded in the glass of this coffee shop. Just a stylish, abstract way to present your product there. Some imposing buildings, always neat to look at. Big malls, 7 or 8 floors, maybe 10-story malls. We were checking things out. There's me playing a nice instrument, and then now, if you'll hang with me, you'll get to hear me playing it. That was a traditional instrument that I had learned. It was sort of like guitar tablature, but it was drawn in a funny way. Here's me and the crew that I was visiting with, Diana Hime and her husband and our other friend. Came to visit, a little bit more snow sculpture action. Beautiful details here on these birds, one of my favorites. And a similar theme, some flying paper birds. And my favorite of the show, of course, this is a forest guy. I'm also thinking about nature in the forest right now. Speaking of that, here we are during our trip to a bonsai master. And on his front lawn, terraced, we've got hundreds of species, hundreds of examples of exquisite bonsai. And he had a side shed also that he took us into and let us see all of his trees. Beautiful specimens. I had hoped really to see, of course, more gardening taking place, but as you can tell, it was a little too snowy for that. But I still got to enjoy the evergreens and see some of the specifics of the way that the Japanese do their gardening. Here's a temple. Several of them around. We visited a number of them. You would often visit and throw your coinage into this little box that you can see in the front. And those monks were in there like chanting. And this is the grounds of the temple. We saw a newly married couple here and talked to them for a while. They were taking photographs and visiting to get a blessing for their newborn. Nice time. This was on the hillside overlooking the city. Nice shot of the Shinto temple. Okay, here is Masuichi Beach, and at first we climbed all the way to the top of one of these ridges, but then we saw a rope leading down, and we actually, all of us went down this precarious rope and down to the beach. So you'll see it's pretty steep grade, and it took us some time, but it made for a really nice adventure. One of the more memorable things that I did. Beautiful shot. And this is us coming down from up on high where we were viewing everything. You can see the city tucked into the mountains. It's Hime going down to the beach, rocky beach. Of course, it was too cold to swim, but these formations coming up out of the ocean, very beautiful. I remember sitting and listening to the waves for a long time and having a splendid time. And up in the hills, you would often find little shrines everywhere. Here's an overlook made by the city. You can pause if you want to read this upcoming plaque. Survey Mountain. A castle in a fairy tale perched in the darkness. And here's me smiling down at Masuichi Beach, staying warm and dry in my rain slicker that I was wearing all the time. Hot springs were my favorite activity. You can see that a lot of different ones are available. This is the one that we went to in Noboribetsu. It's regarded as one of the hot spring hotbeds in Japan. And that's a view. Of course, I couldn't take a camera inside because everyone is nude, and it's split, male and female. But a wonderful experience, feeling the ice-cold wind and looking at the snow while being outside, and the hot water. And these are some food items, and a map here of Muroran. A bit earlier we saw some dolls. I'll get to more about that later. Since my friends were teachers, we went to the schools and participated in like some of the school activities, and that was some treats that the students had given me. I love this fish. And I was thinking a lot about pizza, because, you know, it's not really a big thing over there. Okay, we went into like a shop where people do family shrines, and they're quite expensive, but often you'll find these in people's homes. And they're just memorials of people passing. I don't know the specifics of it, but you can see that one is, you know, almost $5,000. Exquisitely hewn, and there's a sweet memorial for a dog. Isn't that sad? Very, very sad. And some other things available in that shop. I got a nice little incense holder, which I treasure and value highly, for only like 500 yen. And the city itself had a lot of bronze sculptures along the streets. So while I was strolling around, a couple of days, I just strolled the city, as you would imagine. And then this cat laying on gold, I just love it. I like cats. And Muroran there, one of the street art bits. Do it yourself. I've always been into that ethic. It's good to see it here on this baseball cap. And this is like a game or a toy you could buy, and you would be popping out this paper to create this. Here's another one. Really exquisite, you know, sort of like paper crafting. Make these little vignettes. And everything is careful attention to detail. Here's a treat, candy that I got a sample of and loved it. Some architectural things here to enjoy. Some plants on a bench. I'm always into that kind of thing. Here's the post office, of course. Got to send some things back to the States. And there we have a ship at the Muroran Visitor Center, and they also have a time capsule. Beautiful experience here at this restaurant called Yellow Submarine, which, as you can imagine, as we enter, after taking a look at this little beast, it is themed on the Beatles. All kinds of Beatles memorabilia everywhere you look. And they were playing Beatles music. It's a man and his wife, and made me one of the best meals I had while enjoying my time in Japan. And here's a shot of it. And this is I just thought it was just seeing these strange vehicles you would never see in the States. This is like a really compact little item. Right, yeah, thought this cat was cool. And people still jam into Jimi Hendrix. I did get to go see one concert while I was there. And I played a lot of Mega Man at night. I beat Mega Man 1, 2, and 3, I think. Okay, the Steelers. I lived in Pittsburgh, and I didn't know that the Moran ice hockey team was the Steelers. That was a great coincidence. I'm a Steelers fan. Speaking of music, I saw probably 4 or 5 bands. And this girl was a great singer. Probably my favorite for style, vibe, I guess. Great musicians. And I really enjoyed that evening listening to music in the basement. And here's the shower / bathtub, if you can figure that one out. Okay, Dolls Day is March 3rd, but in February everyone has these nice displays up. And we were at some people's house helping them make rice balls, and we had a really, really nice time making yakitori in this garage where they just set up this grate over this pit, and everybody just made the food right there. Fantastic situation, getting to know this family. And the snow was coming down in big flakes, and we could see out of the garage. Here's some shots from inside. They're just a family's garage. And we just looked out. The kids had made an igloo, and here's a shot of some of their houseplants. And it was really amazing to enjoy this setting with this family. And they had a urinal in their bathroom, which I thought was unique. And you would see these everywhere in February, and it's because of an old tradition when they would float dolls down the river early in Japan's history, and that was supposed to get rid of bad spirits. And this is still inside of the house having coffee. That's me. They were happy that they were encouraging us to take pictures in front of this, and we were so happy to enjoy that experience. We did order pizza once, maybe twice, and in the snow it just kept on piling up. I love walking in the snow, exploring the city. Only 2 or 3 days did I really just sit around the apartment. But I was really trying to get out there and take things in, so Diana made me a map, and I just shot off in different directions here and there. Okay, this is actually an arcade game that has a pen stylus. Wow. And it saves your game, of course. You go to the arcade and you can have fun getting pictures of yourselves. Dreams of Mururan, the jazz album. We had the pleasure of hearing a couple of tracks from. And back to doing some more thrifting. We actually did a lot of thrifting. It's really fun. Anywhere you go to check out what's in the shops, especially in a land that you're unfamiliar with. There's a geyser at some info about the geyser at the onsen, the hot spring resort, and that's me at the hot spring resort again. I guess these pictures are kind of split up, but these giant, like, monstrous gods, those are huge. You can't really tell. They look like miniatures, but this is called Hell Valley. Also called, let's see, well, anyway, you can tell that it's just like volcanic activity right below the surface. And afterwards we had wonderful ramen. And if you're ever there in Noburetsu, get this. I was so relaxed after the onsen that this onibi ramen was probably my favorite meal of the whole trip. Here's some more of the gods as we were driving around. And enjoying my time strolling around the city. Going to the various malls. Finding joy in the ordinary. Because after a couple of weeks in Japan, it was just like ordinary life, except there's hot cans of corn soup in vending machine. There was an English-speaking adult group there, and it was like a club. And then one guy brought this awesome ninja sword thing for me, and a yakisoba roll, one of my favorite meals. There was a shop in the city I live in the States that served these, but then that shop went out of business, so I hadn't had one in years. Hokkaido miso ramen. I would love to get a hold of some of the amazing ramen that I enjoyed while I was over there. Everything's cute. Very distinct. Speaking of ramen, like it was so good. I'm a ramen fan anyway, but I found so many to enjoy. And here's a little karaoke club I went to late at night alone, and it was just me and the owner, so we tried to communicate. And here's a shot from inside one of the schools. And then there's a game called Karuta, and they use these tiles, and the kids all assembled in the auditorium, and then a snippet of a poem is spoken, and then it's like a dexterity game. You have to quickly identify what's being said and grab the tile. And so some other shots of walking around the city. Nice garden here I got to enjoy from afar. Probably really amazing. Here's a payphone in Japan, in case you were wondering. You sit on that thing on the right. Beautiful design elements everywhere you look in every city in the world, but I just thought this one was notable. Snow keeps on piling and keeps on falling. Riding the bus, walking around. The couple I was staying with luckily had a car, so it made a lot of things possible, including tea ceremony. The students in one of the schools first performed one for us, and this is a shot from that. One of my favorite art shots from the trip. But then we actually went to a tea master who had this tea ceremony situation set up in her house, in the whole top floor of her house. And that's her there. And this was this little divide where she, there's her phone, and I guess she eventually got into these shelving units and was showing us all types of amazingly packaged teaware and tea accessories, including this wall of teaware, and you'll note on the bottom right the water that comes in. And this is this tea master's setup. Wonderful time. One of my favorite things that I experienced. I've always been into the tea ceremony, and to really be there inside of this woman's house, participating in it, was fascinating, fantastic, transcendental. I loved it. Onsen, the hot springs, and the tea ceremony were my favorite situations. And I was asking about ko, which is the incense ceremony. And finally, I don't know if this was an opium pipe or what, but she showed that to us too. But anyway, when I expressed to her that I wanted to see incense, she brought out this packet of these little rolled up balls of incense and these chips of wood that are burnt. And inside, right here, she has this brazier, I guess, that, it's burning coals. It's like a live fire in the top floor of her house. And here's the treats that you eat before the slightly bitter tea is served. And I still have some memorabilia from that, and there's her on her phone. And 2 other Japanese students were there with us. And she gave us 2 of these little treats, the ginkgo leaf, and I saved one for like the flight back. And I was just hanging on to it for dear life. And I really loved it. And so here's a beautiful scroll, and once again, more of the girls' day or the dolls' day, Hinematsuri holiday. Everyone featured this little display in their homes. And traditionally on March 4th, you've got to get all that stuff taken down, because otherwise your daughter is going to marry late or not get married or something. And then we afterwards went out for some more Hokkaido curry ramen. And then I thought this was a unique little toothpick holder. And here's my meal. Delicious Hokkaido curry. Very good. You can approximate it in the States, but it'll never be that good. They even ship it. Alright, here we have, this was the area we were hanging out in during that afternoon. So you can see, I mean, it's a city that's been around for some time. This was sort of a game shop. I thought it was unique to see Warhammer stuff there. Because I was playing Warhammer in middle school. This was kind of just like what you'd expect, you know, kind of a dingy hobby store with a lot of antique stuff. And it's a very industrial area. Industry everywhere you look. Steel refining, I guess. I mean, you know, the Steelers, it tells you everything you need to know right there. I didn't know what half of this stuff was, but those are just miles, you know, acres and acres of factories. And these little road dividers are cute, of course, in Japan. You see that everything has got like a cartoon style. Oh, and another teacher served us this amazing Italian meal, which was fantastic. I was really craving Italian food and sort of like staples that I would enjoy in the States while I was there. But not to say that the food was bad in any way whatsoever. Here's a pachinko parlor. And these guys sitting around gambling. We went together and experienced it. These little balls will come, and it's really strange. These balls shoot around, and you just sort of sit there and watch what's going on. So it's an idle sort of a stimulation. And then you trade in for these items, but they get around the law by giving you these little cards, which you take outside off the premises and around the corner, and then you trade those in for real money. So that's how they get around it being gambling. Karaoke, of course. And the karaoke we enjoyed was at a place called Thriller. Yes, that's right, like Michael Jackson's Thriller. So as you went in, you could see bats all over the ceiling and crucifixes, and it was a Halloween-themed, horror-themed karaoke, and each room was like, well, you know, just kind of like what you would expect, like a haunted house. Gothic situation, gargoyles, and things on the walls. Really neat. Including this bookshelf. And each room like a little crypt. We had a nice time. Paying by the hour. I think you pay by the hour. And I just thought it was humorous that this recycling logo is on a discarded cup. This restaurant lets you order your meal at a little kiosk instead of interacting with a human being, and this was what I ate on that evening. Okay, similar to American Walmarts, there's this company called Supercenter Trial. And as you can see, if you've ever been in a Walmart, it's very similar. We were there in the evening, and some of the products were partitioned off with this netting. And the t-shirts had, in some cases, English writing. I thought this was a touching quote. So very much like a big box store in America, anything you could desire. And just some more scenes to remind me of home. And I bought this whiskey there and enjoyed it quite a lot. One of the last few nights I was there. I bought all these ceramics and took them home in my luggage. And I bought some flowers for my housemates. As I was leaving, they could enjoy the beauty of those. Also, on one of the final nights, we had pizza with one of the other English teachers. And here's a shot of that. You can see where my head was at throughout the trip. And this was just one of the final things that I saw that was noteworthy I wanted to snap a picture of. And here is me saying goodbye to Japan and thanking you for watching.